It's time to go beyond the headlines, cause I don't put in overtime just so I can headline. Okay, now it's Fox Sports, I'm live with Renee. Going hard every day, sports rapping every play. Different segments for your favorites, coming at you daily with positive vibes, yeah, we some game changers. Basketball, football, soccer, with different interviews, you never know who may pop up. Listen, only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington.
It is time for our Positive Vibes Only segment, and this week joining us we have Valerie Brown, a domestic violence survivor and founder of Lady Be Free Resource Center for Women, a nonprofit organization. So Valerie, welcome to the show. I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Renee. I am so excited to be here with you.
Let's get right into it. Tell us your story for the listeners that do not know your background, having been a domestic violence survivor. Take us through what got you to this point.
Sure. So 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago, I experienced domestic violence. I was 21 years old, and I really didn't know what domestic violence was. I didn't know how to define it. I knew what was happening to me wasn't right, but I really didn't know that it was domestic violence that I was going through. I went through, the physical abuse. I went through verbal abuse, and even was threatened with a gun. So, there were several things that we had gone through. I won't go through all the gory details, but certainly I did get through it, and that is why my quest is what it is today. I am unapologetic about the violence that I've been through. I've lost children as a result of the stress and the abuse, and I am here to help others.
I am so sorry to hear about all that, but I love that you use the term survivor and not victim. And I think
that's right.
That change in itself goes such a long way in changing your mantra and your approach to it, that you survived it. And I know through your work, I saw that 1 in every 4 women have been abused in their lifetime. So, there's
Absolutely.
someone that we know that's being abused or has been abused and did not have the courage you did to either get out of it or to speak up. So take us through that next chapter. You get out of that situation, you move forward, and now you're working to help empower other survivors and help them to get out of their situations.
Sure. Yeah, because I didn't know what it was, I set out on this quest. I said, civic participation is very important. What can I do to aid my community, to help the community thrive, to help us, be a better people as a whole? And I thought about the experience that I had with domestic violence and where I was at that time. I didn't know that there were services available. I didn't know that, there are people, counselors, mentors that I could actually, have a leeway to get help. I wasn't sure of that. It took me 20 years to even tell my story. And I first started telling my story because I released a book about what I had gone through. It's titled Reflection of a Survivor. And folks that knew me over 20 years had no idea that I had even gone through half of the things that I told in my book. So when you're in that situation, after you have, sung the praises of this new boyfriend that you're with, you're a bit embarrassed to even share that now you're going through this level of abuse. And you also develop trauma bonds, right? That's what happened to me. I developed trauma bonds where I felt like, this was the person that I was with. And because of some of the experiences that he had growing up as a child, I felt like I could save him from that. I thought that I could, it was going to be different with me, and that I would endure this abuse because he was angry at what happened to him. And so I became adamant. I became an advocate for those women who were wearing the shoes that I once wore, because I made the conscious choice and the conscious decision not to stay there. I knew that I had to do something different. I knew that there was more from my life for me, not what he had told me, because what happens when you're in an abusive relationship, sometimes the abuser will, make you have low self-esteem and think that, he's the only one that wants you. And I began to believe that. And so I had to literally shift my mindset. Once I made the decision to leave the relationship, I had to shift my mindset. And that's what I set out to do, to help women, to show them that even if it's just through me that, I was able to get through that situation. I was able to go back to college and basically reinvent my entire life. And that's how I became an advocate for doing so. And so it's a joy to me just to even be that person that, women that are currently going through an abusive situation can see that there's some form of light at the end of the tunnel just by coming to the Lady Be Free Resource Center.
Oh, wow. That is tremendous. And you know what? You have been able to get out from your situation, to turn a corner, to empower yourself and to empower those around you. And, I'm sorry, I didn't even realize you're Dr. Valerie Brown. My apologies.
Actually, that's actually a reprint. I'm sorry. I don't know how that actually happened. And I need to contact my publisher because I'm actually not a doctor. And I thought to myself, I said, wow, maybe that should be a goal of mine. So who knows?
Yeah, maybe. I was going to say, it could be a sign. I hadn't seen that until I was looking at your book, and I did see doctor.
Yeah.
And that might be a sign that, maybe you're not done. Maybe you've got some more.
It just might.
To go back and get your doctorate.
It just might. You never know.
But you are an advocate for women's rights. And right now is such a time in our society where we have the Me Too movement. We have women speaking up, whether it's on the political platform or just women's rights in general. And you're a big part of that, the domestic violence battle. So take us through your book and also the steps that you have and the to help unlock your freedom from within, as it's labeled.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention to you too, Renee. Yes, the statistics are 1 in 4 women, but the statistics are also 1 in 7 men would have been victims of severe physical violence. So although we're certainly advocates for women, we started receiving calls asking, do you support men? And we're called the Lady Be Free Resource Center. But one of the things that the board of directors and I decided is that we will start to begin services for men as well, because it's very important to understand that even with the dynamics, socioeconomic changes, sometimes you have where the woman has now become the breadwinner of the family. And unfortunately, abuse happens to men as well. And when you look back at, when you're trying to reach the masses, you figure, well, what is it can we do? So we're trying to tackle this from all angles, and we're looking at even providing services to the abusers as well. Because it will, certainly we can help the women, but, what about those abusers, where they are, because they are crying out for help as well. So I'm so sorry to get off track, but I wanted to make sure that statistic was known as well. Yeah. And it's, you haven't heard much about it, but in the most recent years, we're hearing more about, violence against men as well. So,
and anyway, we get into your steps, I'm no expert on domestic violence by any stretch of the imagination, but I like that you also talked about addressing the abusers, because I do feel like we often see times where there's a consistent pattern. Someone might be abusive to one person, they get in that relationship, and they're abusive in the next relationship. And as you mentioned, like you experienced, it might be where the person that is the abuser is dealing with their own emotional or mental struggle that they don't know how to properly voice. So their way of doing that is by acting out violently or emotionally. And so there may be a cry for help that they just feel like they have no one to turn to. Have you been getting a good response from the abusers as well?
Say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of the question.
Oh, it's okay. Have you been getting a good response in terms of a turnout for reaching the abusers as well as survivors?
We have, and we actually host a summit once a year. It's always in the spring. And year before last, it was just for women. And last year, we decided to include men. And that summit was about relationships, healthy relationships, developing those healthy boundaries, and showing attendees how it is to have, how you can have those healthy relationships, and what does it mean to love yourself first, before you jump to the next relationship. And so we actually had just as many men in attendance as we did the women. So that was certainly a clear indication to us that, we can have as many conferences and summits and retreats for the women, but the men are also equally important. And, if you really want to crack the code and, break the cycle of abuse, you just cannot, help those survivors, but someone has to reach back and help the abusers as well.
That is powerful. And you know what? I'm so happy that we even were able to get into this, because from the surface level, it could seem very cut and dry as to what you're doing. You're a domestic violence survivor. You're working to help other, domestic violence survivors. But no, you're working with men. You're working with abusers. There's so much more in this realm, and this, that you're working with to help try to change and empower. So now we'll get into the steps.
Right.
What are the steps?
Sure. Sorry to take you through that.
No, I am so glad we went left, because, sometimes you got to go left to get right. And we found some really good information within that. So what are some steps that you found that, people can look for, signs they can look for, and steps to unlock your freedom from within, which I love that line. So I got to use it again.
Sure. Absolutely. One of the things, and when you're talking about, signs, I always refer to something called the power and control wheel. And it's certainly a telltale sign if you were to go through the wheel. So, for example, it takes you through the physical as well as sexual violence, some of those examples. But you have like using economic abuse. So you prevent someone from getting or keeping a job. You make them ask for money, right? You give them allowance. That person is in control of that exchange. Using coercion and threats, carrying out threats to do something to hurt another person, threatening to leave them, even using intimidation. Because some of these, when I look back on some of the things that I had gone through with my abuser, the signs were certainly there. I became isolated from my friends. It was something that, he was adamant about. I really, really love you, and I just want to spend, so much time with you. Well, when you're 21, that sounds really good, and you think it's okay. But at the end of the day, when you step back, he was really isolating me from the people that, I love, and the folks that he knew would actually tell me something's not right with this. Another one of the signs for me was the constant calling. If you don't answer the first few times, you just continue to call, because that is a method of controlling you. I need you to answer the phone right now, and I need to talk to you right now. Although these signs may seem very minute, you really just have to be in tune to what's actually occurring. And so those are some of those signs. Abusers typically will even use your children, against you, make you feel guilty about the children. Don't leave me, because, you're going to leave the children. You're going to have the children to relay messages to you to make you feel that you're not worthy, or you're not a great mom because you're taking care of yourself. Using male privilege. There's all sorts of things around that power and control wheel, calling her names, making her think she's crazy, playing mind games. My abuser used to say to me after we make up, and I said, you really hurt me. I've got a bruise on my leg. And he would literally say to me, no, I didn't do that. You're crazy. I would have never done that. And there were times, Renee, that I actually felt like, wow, did that really happen? Because he had me mentally, he really had me mentally to where he was able to smooth and just kind of clear it over and buy a gift, and I was okay. We were okay until the next time, right? So, one of the things that I had learned was that you do not have the ability to change a person. And as much as they say sorry, it will happen again. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. And I think that, we're talking specifically in the area of domestic violence, but I think that also applies to any aspect of relationship. So many people get stuck on trying to change someone, and you can't, there are very minute things that I think do change as you start to get to know each other. But in terms of something like, as we're talking about abuse, that's not something that is going to change, essentially.
No. No, and you can't make the change for the person. That's something that they will have to go and deal with on their own, but it's certainly not something that you can bring out of them. And, sometimes, when I talk to different people, even ones that I know say, Val, why did you stay? That's always the number one question. Typically folks don't ask, well, why did he abuse her? It's all, well, why did you stay? It's more toward the survivor. But, I always tell people, I said, I stayed because I loved him more than I loved myself. Had I loved myself enough to know that I did not deserve this, I wouldn't have stayed there. I stayed there because of fear. I didn't know who to even talk to. I had fear of being alone. I also had fear of, if I told someone in my family, would my family members now go out, and do something to harm him for harming me? I certainly didn't want that. But there are so many different reasons. Not that, that's any reason to stay, because the person is taking care of you. These are not reasons, but this is real life. This is what people, deal with every day. And that even brings me to one of the services that we provide is we actually go into local emergency shelters and provide mentorship services to survivors of domestic violence. And one of the disparities that I found in doing so is that these women typically have 30 to 45 days to stay in a shelter environment. After that, they're, basically put back out on the street. Some of them are placed back in the hands of the abuser because they can't afford fair market value rent. They have nowhere to go. Maybe they've gone to family a few times. Then family sees them continuing to go back to this individual. They don't want them back there. And so, and because of this disparity, we have really began to focus our efforts. Sure, we provide services to survivors as well, but one of the goals that we have placed at the top of our priority list is to develop a transitional facilities for these women that will exit the emergency shelter, because an emergency shelter is exactly what it is. It provides a safe haven for the women in an emergency situation, whereas in a transitional facility, we have developed a 6 to 18-month program that will help those women not only attain self-sufficiency, but to maintain it as well. And so there's a full program that goes into the transitional facility, and then also a responsibility, a call to action for those survivors to now come back and help the ones that will come behind them. So, it's certainly, I think that there will, as time progresses, there will always be some new service that we can provide. But when you really have a heart to help people and you see that there is a need, I feel that we have an obligation to reach back and help others.
Absolutely. Wow. It's full circle, and you're really approaching the entire need. It's not just providing therapy and, counseling, but you're also making sure that you are providing these survivors with a place to live and a place, and a means to move on and make that next step. And then also once they make that next step and they are in a better situation, to now give back. That is truly incredible. What would be your message or advice to someone that's listening that might be dealing with domestic abuse? I know you've been giving a lot of different nuggets in terms of loving yourself and, making sure that and understand that you can't change the person. But what would be your biggest advice as someone who's gone through domestic abuse yourself, survived it, you're thriving, and now you're giving back?
What I would say to that listener is that freedom is not impossible. Right. And I tell people all the time that, it's not impossible. The same letters in the word impossible, it also says I'm possible. And so you've got to know that anything that you put your mind to, and that is the key, is to shifting your mindset, forgiving yourself, but knowing that your freedom is possible. It's not just a matter of, because, someone could take you out of the situation and, put you in a different environment, but you can still be locked into that same mindset. So once you become free within yourself, you can be free on the outside. And so I just want, any listener that is going through an abusive relationship, be it physical or verbal, your freedom is possible. It definitely is possible.
I like that too. You're incredible. Where can our listeners keep up with what you're doing on social media or, just in general? Where can they keep up and get more information?
Sure. So our website is www.ladybe.org. We also have a 24-hour crisis line. That toll-free number is 855-585-FREE. And we can also be found on Facebook at Lady Be Free Resource.
Awesome. So that's 855-585-3733.
33, correct.
Awesome. So what's next for you? What can we expect? It sounds like you are in the process of working through a lot of different things and evolving your organization.
Yeah.
What can we expect from you in the future?
Absolutely. In the last 2 years, I started, facilitating weekend retreats for survivors. And, I did 2 last year, and I'm really looking to actually host more of them, just to see the evolution of women from Friday to Sunday, followed through a 7-week coaching program. It is absolutely amazing. And so that's what I'm looking to do. I am an advocate by nature. I have a huge heart. And so, that's what's next for me, is figuring out and doing activities that will continue to help and evolve the sisters around me and our brothers.
Yes. For anyone that may be dealing with it. Oh, wow. Valerie, yes. Thank you so much. Valerie Brown, maybe future Dr. Valerie Brown.
Yeah, I love it. Maybe that's what's next, right? Maybe I need to look into that.
Yes. Along with the retreats, we're also pursuing your doctorate.
Absolutely. I so thank you for having me, Renee, and helping to continue getting the word out about domestic violence and letting others know that freedom is a choice and they just have to make it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington. You were perfect for our Positive Vibes Only segment, and I am looking forward to seeing what's next for you in the future.
Awesome. Likewise. Thanks so much, Renee.
All right.